This video is going to show you what precision teaching is, when you might use it, and set you up to start straight away today. I'll try and put some links to resources in the comments section, basically so you can download sheets and pro formas. But if you don't have access to that or a printer, you can just make your own. You can draw a lot of these things. They're quite easy to reproduce. I think the beauty of this is its simplicity and the way it engages children. It's particularly good for rote facts, so things like times tables work very well if we want to get that automaticity in learning. So when someone says 7 times 7, they say 49 without even thinking. The reason it works for that is because it's just training, and it works on a daily basis. Small amounts, drip feeding, that sort of approach works really well for that kind of information. Other examples might be spellings that we can't sound out using our knowledge of phonics, so we have to just learn them. We have to learn what they look like, what the letter order is, and we probably abandon phonics for a lot of words because it can give us incorrect spellings. So what is it? It's a great way of learning things that we just need to know. It can be a very rewarding experience for the teacher, and if the teacher's needed. I mean, it can be very rewarding, and pretty much always is for the children as they see their progress. Quite often we just put new challenges in front of them. And it's hard for ourselves. I think we can all reflect on that if we don't see our progress and record it and feed back to ourselves, then we kind of forget about it, and we're losing out on some motivation there. It's easy to manage, so it's not a big deal either. So if you're trying to persuade children to learn their times tables, that might be a good way of introducing it. It will work for that reason. You know, we sleep and we begin a new day, and we do a little bit every day is a lot more effective than spending 30 minutes once a week on it, for example. Even if we only did 3 10-minute sessions, that would be a lot more effective. It's great for letters, spellings, times tables, number facts, any of that stuff that we don't really reason when we're trying to remember it. We just know it, and we need a lot of fluidity with these types of things. Otherwise we get slower with maths operations later on, or with writing, or even with reading. So it supports that automaticity, and it's very, very easy to do day to day. So the first step, first of all, we're just going to identify the learning, and by that we need to find something quite specific. So I'm going to use an example here, and the reason it's called precision teaching is it's very, very precise. So we might just be learning some letter names here, and we're not going to be going for the whole alphabet because that would be too much. So we find the gaps. This person that I'm thinking of needs to learn a few letters. By that, they can say the phonics. They can say b, d. They sometimes say j and then call g, j, for example, or p. They might be confusing that. Maybe they don't know the letter names as well, so they can say qu, but not q. And actually, that's useful when we're spelling, when we move beyond phonics. So about halfway through primary school, typically, towards the end anyway. So we're going to pick typically 5, I think, is a good number to start with. And we'll teach for 10 minutes. So there's a lot that goes in there, really. We're looking at 10 minutes of teaching and 1 minute of a quick test, and that's the thing that provides the feedback. So teaching for this, we may literally engage in multisensory methods of writing the letter. So we might say p, P as we're learning it. It's important that they learn the letter name as well in the example that I'm thinking of. If, for all children, it's a gap in their learning. It's almost like it's reversed. As a child, I learned the alphabet but not phonics, but now we're learning phonics, and it seems like we're disregarding that knowledge of the alphabet and how useful actually the letter names are as well. So you could use my worksheets. These are available on my website. I'll put a link down there. In this example, we're trying to lasso all the examples of D. We do a bit of talking about words. Where is it? Identifying it in the word, the sound. The letter name is reinforced as well with flashcards here. The words are then written underneath. The examples there, dog, dog, bed. It's in different places in some of the words. Then a bit of reading there, identifying the d sound in a word we've already introduced. The sentences actually in this example are quite well structured because they build on the letters that we've learnt already. If anyone's ever used a multisensory Hickey style approach or Orton Gillingham, the best place to start is they recommend with the letter I. and then moving through we get T, and then we can build up sentences like this one using the letters that we've learned already. Down the bottom there's a handwriting technique that I learned off Mr. Neil McKay. It's about using a highlighter. It's a bit more than just putting a line across. We have to have the small part of the letter fits inside that. But again, it's linking together the movement as well. The multisensory learning is the key part here. And here's an example of what my table looks like on a Saturday morning, typically, and a Sunday morning sometimes. So I get a chance to work with some pupils, and when we're working at this sort of level, it's about motivation. As you can see, we're trying to make it as engaging as possible and also as multi-sensory as possible. Luckily, the two are one and the same thing, really. So we've got letters there, wooden letters that we can flip over. There's no magnets on the back to tell you which way up is right. We just sort of are building up that physical, visual connection with the letters. Plasticine, we may call it Play-Doh. There is some Play-Doh there. I find that doesn't work as well actually when we're building letters. Reward charts, use of Lego, highlighters. We've got the Hickey version of flashcards there that I've made a set of myself. A salt tray, that's quite a nice, easy thing to make. I always sprinkle a bit of glitter in. And yeah, iPads are a fantastic tool to use. There's a whole wealth of apps there. I can give you information on that if anyone wants to know. Leave a comment, I guess. So once we've done a bit of teaching, so in that case we were going over the letters, so it's quite specific. We might not do all the letters, we might just do one letter and some of the others over the next 4 sessions. The point being that we're building up automaticity. Sometimes it's best to just focus on one fact or a couple of facts. With timetables we might use flashcards in that example, but as I say, we're using a letters example here. And I'll probably make other videos giving examples of how we'd use it in numeracy, for example. Can be done in school, outside of school, by teachers, by non-educators, and independently. So let's test now and chart the progress. So say we've worked for about 8 or 9 minutes on the letters there, B, D, P, G, I think were some of them. We would then put them into a table like this, and we're going to fill up the probe sheet, we call it, with a randomized, it's kind of pseudo-random really, isn't it? But we randomize the order of the responses. So they're going through and they're pointing at each letter in this example, saying the letter name and the sound it makes, recognizing the 2 versions of the grapheme as well is important here. Every probe sheet is going to be different because every child has different gaps in their learning. In this case, the rest of the alphabet was fine. It was just these letters. So we're focusing on all of these in one batch, and the task is for 1 minute. You can move your finger along, and it's helpful if you train them to do it as well, actually, because you're going to be using your hands to first of all start the stopwatch and then tally correct and incorrect responses. Now if they make an error, for instance they say D or P-D, we would then correct them, and usually they'll make that mistake again when P comes up again, but we just correct again. Of course that adds to the time and the amount of correct responses they get, but we can see that there's not fluency there, and it's an opportunity for learning, so we're going to use it. That's my recommendation anyway. So yeah, over time we're going to expect that with the teaching, and actually this task as well I believe is very similar to rapid naming. It's going to build up the automaticity just in itself doing this. After 1 minute we're going to record all the responses, whether they were correct or incorrect. Okay, so if you have to adjust what they're saying, we'll put that down as an incorrect rather than skipping. Here's another example using whole words. This can be very effective for learning those 100 high frequency words. These examples we can all use phonics to an extent to read. So it's helpful that we build up automaticity so we don't rely on phonics, because it's quicker. When we're reading, we don't want to be using too much phonics really, as we're trying to advance in our level of comprehension of what we're reading anyway. We can't be sounding out because that fills up our working memory, and especially with people who show elements of dyslexia in the profile, then that's going to be a challenge for some of those people. Okay, so there's the examples. Times table 1. In this case we've got the question with the answer. It's quite easy to see how we can make flashcards out of this as well with the answer on the back, either for self-testing or for testing with an adult if we're trying to engage someone. What we could also do here is have the question. So for the first box there we could have 18, and then the response when they point to it is to say 3 times 6 or 6 times 3. We can also have them in different arrays, but let's not go too far into maths. Here's the idea of how we plot it. I've got a version of this chart that I've recreated. They're very hard to find online. People want to charge you a lot of money for these. Essentially, it's a graph where this example is made for the PowerPoint really, but normally there's a slight bias to how far away the lines are from each other. So that we show small steps, show a big difference. And as we get faster, that difference becomes less measured. But the point here is to set a target for naming letters. Something over 40 would be a pretty good target, actually, to aim for. And we draw a line along the top. Obviously, green is correct answers, red is incorrect answers. Here we can see that actually we're not seeing a great deal of movement. And after 3 days, I would say something's not working there. So it's about adjusting the teaching method. It's the only thing that we can change. And we might try a different approach. You might try flashcards instead of Play-Doh, whatever is engaging and motivating the child. Or perhaps we might choose to focus on less letters in the teaching before. So as I said before, we don't have to do all 5, but sometimes it can be motivating for the student to do all 5. So we basically review whatever's happening. You'll be able to talk with them and go, well, what's helping you remember this? Because we do see a little improvement after 4 days. And that would, I hope, be because after 3 days we should be changing approach. It should be making a difference. The amount of errors is the first thing you'll hopefully see drop down, and obviously for everyone that goes down, we're going to see at least one correct answer. So what we should really see is something a bit more like this, where the error rate is going down, the child is plotting that themselves, they're doing it with a pencil, you're helping them with their graph work, I suppose, at the same time. But basically what we're doing is we're giving them a bit of ownership over this and of their own learning. Then we've got the arc of the green ones going up, and that's to show that basically we get this crocodile mouth effect, and eventually it will break through the target up the top there. It's a really concrete measure of feedback. It gives them a good understanding of graphing as well, I have to say. So who might use this? Rapid naming, speed of processing, anyone who needs to learn facts, times tables, spellings, phonics, things like that, things that need automatic, quick recall of facts. So I'll post a few more examples as videos on here if you like. So coming soon, yeah, speaking of that, I thought I'd keep myself accountable here because I've got all these techniques and I haven't got time in the week and to spread this all out any other way. And I think it's stuff that just needs to be out there really, because not everyone can afford private tuition. It's something that I think is unfairly distributed anyway, and certainly schools don't have as much expertise as we'd like in how to help those children who are struggling. They'd admit this themselves, they're not dyslexia specialists. They will screen and they will allow extra time, but when it comes to intervening, there's a small number of people in each school and maybe they're spread a bit thin. So I think parents need these skills. I think young people need to use them. I've given these techniques, a lot of these I'm showing here. They're not all skills, but I've used with adults, in their 40s. Some people older than me have been for assessment with me and had a diagnosis, and it was one of the recommendations of things that they do. So I want to put some other indicating things up there, maybe some screening tools. So things like a working memory test. It won't be completely accurate because it's online, it's not at all personalized. But things like that and the rapid naming test and a phonics skills test can give you a bit of an idea of where your skill set is. With the testing that we do officially, obviously there's a bit of a variation depending on how old you are, things to do with when you were taught, things like that, all sorts of other factors come into it. But you can certainly get an idea or a feel for if you're a person or you have a person with you who is struggling with one of those particular areas. We'll certainly be able to identify that a bit. And we're not going to diagnose you through a YouTube video, but what we can do is say, right, you struggle with working memory, this kind of thing will help. Not hurt. Rapid naming test, that's kind of one of the tests that we do use in assessment. And I think precision teaching is very good for building up the speed of processing that a lower result there would indicate. Spelling techniques, I've got a great technique that I just need to get out there. It's not a lot different, but it's very simple and it's very, very effective. It's one of the first things I give out if anyone comes to see me, and they always tell me it's made a huge difference. So why not get that out a bit further? There's a lot there we could go into. I think if I start listing everything I could do a video on, I'm going to get lots of comments saying, when is this coming? Well, that wouldn't be such a bad thing. I know people are watching then. Let me know if this has been useful, either by just putting a thumbs up on it. I don't get anything out of that other than a bit of feedback. I'm not putting ads on these or anything, but I think that, you know, this is a useful resource for people who've been to see me as well. And perhaps if you're thinking of seeing me and you want a bit more advice along these lines, either keep watching videos or you know, visit my website and give me a call. I'd be happy to advise you or signpost you to someone near you if you're a way away. Anyway, thanks for watching, and yeah, give it a go. I'm pretty sure you'll find it works really well for spellings, times tables, and they're the two things that we're typically given as homework. I, as a teacher, used to give those out as homework. And you know, it's one of the hardest things to learn because there is no reasoning behind it. It's just memory. So I hope it's useful for you. If you're a parent, if you're a teacher, you can apply this in the classroom. And yeah, if it has been helpful, let me know. I'd really love some feedback. It would motivate me to make some more of these.